No one recognized him. Not the prison guards, not the inmates, not even the warden. When Ibrahim Traoré disguised himself as an ordinary prisoner and entered Kotoka prison, what he would see would shake him to his core. 6 days later, the entire prison system would be turned upside down. To the east of Ouagadougou, surrounded by gray concrete walls and barbed wire, Kotoka prison was the most feared institution in Burkina Faso. Behind those high walls began another world where laws and hope did not exist. On a Sunday morning in the early hours, the heavy iron gates of the prison opened. Another prisoner was about to enter. There was nothing unusual about his name. Moussa Dio, 38 years old, arrested for a minor robbery attempt. Nothing out of the ordinary in his documents, but there was something. The documents didn't say. This man was actually Ibrahim Traoré, the transitional leader of Burkina Faso, the most powerful man in the country. "Move forward." "Hurry up," said the guard at the main gate harshly, without making eye contact. Traoré didn't object. He had several days' stubble on his face, his hair was disheveled, and he wore an old faded shirt and torn pants. Nothing about his body, neither his posture nor his speech nor his gaze indicated that he was the head of state. The reason behind his entry into Kotoka prison was simple. For the past 3 months, reports from the prison were always the same. Everything is normal. No problems. Conditions are improving. But anonymous letters arriving at Traoré's desk told a different story. Torture, starvation, missing prisoners, and mysterious deaths. There were 2 different realities, and Traoré could see only one way to know which was true, to see with his own eyes. Traoré's first hours were no different from any other newcomers: an old, stained prison uniform, an empty cell block, and the constant shouting of guards. He was assigned to cell block C-Vivin, the most feared section of the prison. He sat on the lower bunk assigned to him. The sheets on the bed were filthy, with a thin blanket and a pillow as hard as stone. The other inmates in the cell block looked at him suspiciously. Every newcomer was a potential threat. "Hey, new guy," said a large inmate from the opposite bunk. "How did you end up here?" "A store robbery," Traoré said in a calm voice, fixing his eyes on the man's. "An unsuccessful robbery," he added, smiling slightly. "I didn't even have a gun." "I guess luck wasn't on your side," said the big man, leaning forward. His name was Bakari, and he was the most influential inmate in cell block C7. He determined what happened in the cell block, who lived and who died. "What about you?" Traoré asked. "What brought you down here?" Bakari laughed a bitter and cold laugh. "Little man, I'm not an ordinary prisoner. I've spent the last 15 years here. Murder, theft, everything. But my real crime was getting caught. What's life like here in Kotoka?" Traoré asked, the curiosity in his voice genuine. Bakari lost the smile on his face. "Life. There is no life here. There's only waiting. We're waiting for death. That's all." As evening fell in the darkness of the cell block, a new sound was heard. A moan full of pain and weak. It came from a bunk in the corner. Traoré looked carefully. There, a young man who had wasted away to almost a skeleton lay with his trembling body. His face was covered in sweat and his eyes were burning with fever. "What happened to him?" Traoré whispered to the inmate next to him. "Gaspard," said an old prisoner sadly. "He was beaten by the guards 2 weeks ago. They never looked at his broken ribs. Now the infection has spread throughout his body." "Doctor, medicine?" Traoré asked. The cell block inmates laughed bitterly. "Doctor, there is no doctor here," said the old man. "If you get sick, you either recover or die. The guards don't care." When morning came, the first shock arrived. Before the cell doors opened, guards entered. They moved toward Gaspard's bunk. The young man was now motionless. "Another one gone," said the head guard Bolot in an indifferent voice. "Get him out." 2 guards began to drag Gaspard's lifeless body as if carrying a sack of rice, as if this were a routine procedure that happened every day. A rage swelled inside Traoré, but his face remained expressionless. A prisoner could not react. A prisoner's anger would be punished immediately. Head guard Bolot scanned the entire cell block, his eyes stopping when they reached Traoré. "You new guy," he said. "You'll be working in the kitchen today." The prison kitchen was as dark and gloomy as the prison itself. Inadequate rotten food-rusted equipment and desperate prisoners. Traoré was assigned as a chopper. For hours he chopped rotten vegetables. His eyes watched everything. The quantities of food, the preparation conditions, the level of hygiene. He turned to the old prisoner beside him. "These vegetables are rotten," he said quietly. "How do you make food with these?" The old man laughed bitterly. "These aren't for us, son," he said. "The prisoner's food is in that cauldron in the corner. We only eat gruel." When Traoré turned his head, he saw a cook preparing food with better ingredients at another cauldron. "What is he cooking?" "The guard's food," said the old man. "They eat meat. We get bones. They eat bread. We get mold. That's the order here." That night when Traoré returned to the cell block, Bakari was waiting for him. "Come, new guy," said Bakari. "I have things to tell you." They withdrew to the corner, Bakari's eyes tearful. At the end of the corridor, he said in a whisper, "There's a special room. Prisoners who go in there either never return or come back as different people." Traoré listened, engraving every word into his mind. "There's a secret economy here." Bakari continued, "Bribes for decent food, bribes for medicine, even bribes to stay alive. If you don't have money, if you don't have family, God help you." "How long has it been like this?" Traoré asked. "Always," said Bakari. "But it's gotten much worse in the last year, since Warden Kabore took office." On the third day, Traoré faced reality. Another young prisoner died like Gaspar. But this time the prisoner who died wasn't just ill. He had died after being taken to the special room. What happened to him? Traoré whispered to Bakari as the others slept. "Torture," said Bakari. "Because his family didn't have money to pay a bribe. There are electric shock devices and more in that room. Don't you hear the noise?" Traoré nodded. The screams he heard at night were real. "But why?" he asked. "Why would they do such a thing?" "Money," said Bakari. "Everything is for money. They receive a budget from the ministry for each prisoner, but they give us almost nothing. On paper, this prison looks perfect. But in reality..." Traoré's stomach turned. What he suspected was much worse. On the fourth day, it was Traoré's turn. 2 guards grabbed him and dragged him to the special room. A kick to his stomach took his breath away. "The warden wants to see you," new guy said one. "I hope you have a good story." The special room exceeded even Traoré's worst nightmares. The walls were covered with blood stains. In the corner were electric shock devices and baton-like tools. In the center stood a heavy iron chair with handcuffs. Warden Kabore entered. Fat, his uniform impeccable, his eyes merciless. He held Traoré's fake file in his hand. "Musadio," said Kabore, "or whoever you are, we heard you talking to Bakari. You've been asking too many questions." "I'm just a prisoner," Traoré said in a calm voice. "I'm trying to survive." "To survive," said Kabore, smiling. "We need money. Do you have family friends who could help you?" Traoré remained silent. What Bakari had said was true. This was a racket system. "Look," said Warden Kabore, "let me tell you how it works here. You either pay or you suffer. Simple." "How much?" Traoré asked. "For someone like you, let's say 500,000 CFA. This was more than a year's income for an average Burkinabe, and if I don't pay..." Kabore pointed with his finger to the electric shock devices. "Then the fun begins." "Warden," said Traoré, "I think I have an offer for you." Kabore raised his eyebrows with curiosity. "I'm listening." "Before you beat me, I want to show you who I am," said Traoré. "Maybe we can come to an understanding." The warden laughed. "Well, show me. What are you?" "A lost prince, a secret millionaire." With a calm movement, Traoré pulled out a small plastic object from his pocket, a transmitter given by the Secret Service. He activated it by pressing a simple button. "What are you doing?" asked Kabore with surprise. "Calling for help," said Traoré, "and be sure they're very close." Kabore's smile faded. "What is this?" he shouted. "Guards. Take him away." But when the door opened, it wasn't guards who entered. It was fully equipped special forces, armed and masked Traoré's loyal guards. "What's happening?" stammered Kabore, stumbling backward. "Who are these men?" Traoré slowly stood up. His posture had changed. His back was now straight, and his eyes were those of a commanding leader. "Warden Kabore, I am Ibrahim Traoré," he said in a calm voice, "and you are under arrest." The expression on Kabore's face changed from surprise to horror. His legs trembled. He nearly fell. "Impossible," he whispered. "Warden Kabore," said Traoré, "I've heard many allegations about you and your guards, torture, extortion, mistreatment, even deaths, and now I've seen it with my own eyes." Masked guards restrained Kabore. The man was no longer resisting. He was frozen in shock. But... Kabore stammered. "We were just following orders from the ministry, from the government." "I am the government now," said Traoré, "and the only order I gave was justice and dignity for all Burkinabe." From outside, helicopter sounds were heard. The prison was now completely surrounded. "I appointed you as prison warden," said Traoré, but seeing the hell you created, I will now be your first prisoner no longer." Along the corridors there was chaos. Guards were dropping their weapons and surrendering. Some tried to escape, but failed. When the door of cell block C7 opened, the prisoners looked in astonishment. Traoré entered with equipped soldiers beside him. He now looked like a head of state. His posture, voice, and gaze had completely changed. Bakari said Traoré to his former cellmate. You really—" Bakari's words caught in his throat. "Yes," said Traoré, "and everything I heard, every story has value. Now the time has come, time for justice." Traoré examined every corner of the prison. What he saw deeply shook him: torture rooms, prisoners on the verge of starvation, inhumane conditions. He documented the situation of each prisoner, noted the name of each guard, and recorded every atrocity. On Saturday, everyone will gather in the prison yard, Traoré ordered. A Secret Service agent asked with concern, "Sir, will there be punishment?" "Execution." Traoré shook his head. "No, there will be justice, and justice is more powerful than vengeance." On Saturday, the morning sun illuminated the prison yard. There were people on two sides. On one side, weak, filthy prisoners. On the other, frightened guards and prison administrators. Traoré stood without a uniform, in plain clothes. Beside him were ministers and state officials. Today, Traoré began, Burkina Faso will make a choice. Will we stand with the oppressed or with the oppressors? Are we not guilty if we just watch injustice as spectators? Everyone was silent. Some of the guards had bowed their heads. In the eyes of the prisoners there was both hope and fear. "I am closing Kotoka prison from today," said Traoré. "The structure of shame will be demolished, and a rehabilitation center will be established in its place. Warden Cabaret and his accomplices will be fairly tried." Traoré continued, "And be assured when I say fair, I don't mean like your justice. I mean real justice." A guard began to cry. Another fell to his knees. "All prisoners will undergo a health check. The sick will be provided treatment. The hungry will be given food, and all cases will be reviewed." Bakari looked with disbelieving eyes. "Is this real?" he whispered. Real, Traoré replied, "Because Burkina Faso will no longer hide the truths. We will face realities." Weeks later, the former Kotoka prison was unrecognizable. Walls had been demolished, barbed wire removed. In its place, an open campus had been established, a center for education, treatment, and rehabilitation for former prisoners. The place that was once a special torture room was now a library. The old kitchen had become a soup kitchen where healthy meals were cooked. In the yard, the former inmates of cell block C7 had gathered. Among them was Bakari, now working as a health officer. "President Traoré is coming today," he said excitedly. "We must thank him." When Ibrahim Traoré arrived, he was in simple clothes, just like the day he first came. But he was no longer hiding. He was a leader who came from among the people and never forgot his roots. A prison system, said Traoré to the crowd, is a mirror of a nation. Today, when we look in this mirror, we see pride instead of shame. As he shook hands with the former prisoners, there were tears in someone's eyes. It was Gaspar, treated and now restored to health. "Mr. President," said Gaspar in a trembling voice, "you saved my life." Traoré shook his head. "No, Gaspar," he said, "we saved each other's lives because a nation is only as strong as its weakest member." Bakari, along with other former prisoners, surrounded Traoré. "No one applauds their rulers standing," he said, recalling an old proverb, "but everyone embraces their brother." And so that day in Burkina Faso's most feared prison, an embrace began. A leader embracing his people, a nation embracing its future. The Kotoka incident was the beginning of a major reform movement in Burkina Faso's prison system. Warden Cabaret and his accomplices were fairly tried and punished. But more importantly, Ibrahim Traoré's 6 days in the secret prison sent a message to the entire country. No Burkinabe, even in prison, will be forgotten. Real power, Traoré said later in an interview, is protecting the weak. Real leadership is feeling the pain of your people. And real freedom comes when there is justice for all. This story continued to be told not only in Burkina Faso but throughout Africa, as the story of a leader's hardships to understand the pain of his own people and a nation's journey from darkness to light.